Alright, now that we have our data source and data source view built, we're going to continue to build the actual cube itself. So let's go back to our project. And here we go. Now if we right click on cubes, click on new cube, another wizard will pop up. Hit next here. We want to build the cube using a data source that we already built, and we want to auto build it. Data source, we only have one, which is an FL warehouse. That's what we want to use. It's going to analyze the tables and fact table and try to figure out exactly what we want, and it's usually pretty close. Now, it figured out this is the fact table. It figured out these are all of our dimensions. However, some of these dimensions, as we discussed before, and it's in the document, are in generational format. As in, for example, like the time, we have week ID, then I have quarter, and then you could have season, something like that. Um, Players, so you have player, you have position, and then you have team. But something like stats I set up in parent-child format. So I have two parents, offensive stats and defensive stats. And then I have, and I have two columns, a parent column and a child column, plus an alias column. Um, and then, the all the offensive stats have the offensive stat parent, and all the defensive stat has a defensive stat parent. The wizard is really good at the generational builds, not so good at figuring out these are parent-child. So anytime I have a parent-child, I'm actually going to uncheck it, and I'm going to build that myself. So we're going to, so far that's the only one we have, so I'm going to uncheck that and let it build the other ones on its own though. So we hit next. This is our value field that we have in our fact table, and this is default. These two are defaults that are built, and I just leave them in there. Hit next. Hit next. We can rename all these. I'm going to leave them as is for now, but this is where we go ahead if you just want to name them teams instead of dim teams. But I'm going to leave them as is. Hit next. We're going to call this WFFL cube and hit finish. And there we go. Now, you see these are all in blue. That means they're the dimension tables. Yellow is, and sometimes if you pull one in, you won't see it, it won't be blue. That means it hasn't really been connected to the fact table yet. So now we got all of our dimensions except for our stat that we want in parent-child. So let's do that now. We're going to right-click New Dimensions. Again, another wizard pops up. It looks very similar to what we just saw. Build the dimensions using a data source, auto build, etc., etc. Again, we want to use an FL warehouse. This is a standard dimension. You can set it up as a time dimension or even server time dimension. So I go down to the second, it probably, but it's standard. We're going to leave it as is. The table we're going to use is stats. Key column is stat ID, and the one containing the member name is stat alias. So we let it know that. Attribute in Microsoft OLAP language is a little different than how we use it in Hyperion language. But this is correct. This is what we want here. Hit next. It's a regular dimension, but there's other templates you could use, as you can see here, but we're going to keep it regular. Now, this is the real helpful part. You want to check this. The dimension contains parent-child relationship between attributes. Attribute is just really any other fields not the ID field. That's kind of how they view it there. Identify the parent attribute in a hierarchical relationship. That is indeed stat parent, and you can see the table as is, and it set it up correctly. So we're going to hit next. It's going to build. Hit next. says no hierarchies, even though it built a hierarchy. I still don't really understand that, but um, it works, so just leave it as that. One of those quirky messages. Dim stats, that's fine. Finish. Now let's go back to here. We want to add it here, so add cube dimension, dim stats, hit OK, and we should see it show up in blue because it's a dimension, and there it is. Now, let's process all of this. Actually, I'm going to stop there and we'll start the next video here so we don't take up too much space in this video. So now we have our dimension and our cubes built. Next, we're going to actually deploy them and then mess a little bit with hierarchies in the actual dimensions themselves.